Welcome back, everybody. We're working on the Game Maker platformer game, and we can do a lot here, but one of the things we want to do is sort of improve this room a little bit more. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you can't see all of the room at once. We're going to add some hints to help us as we go, and then I'm going to add like a death object. If you land on it, it will basically cause a restart. So let's go ahead and get started on this. The first thing we want to do is make it so we can't see all of the room at once. So what we're going to do is go to the room property, and that's this window over here. If you don't have it open, just go to the resources and then double click on room 1 or whichever room you called it. And then you go to the room settings and you're going to expand the viewports and cameras. You're going to check the box to enable viewports. And then let's go to viewport 0. We'll just start there. We're going to check this box to make sure it's visible. And when I hide the resources tab over here, you'll see that the camera and the viewport show us the entire screen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to restrict the camera so it can't see all of the room. And then the viewport is really the game window that you see, and I'll show you how that's different. So the first thing we're going to do is change the camera. I don't want to see all of the screen. So we're going to make a couple changes. We're going to go ahead and do a 640 by 480. And now you can see that's about how much of the screen you can see. You can dial that back and make it even smaller if you want. It's up to you how you want to set it up. It's a 3 by 4, so you could, or a 4 by 3, you could put 400 by 300, which is the general ratio here. And when you click off it, that's even a smaller view. It just depends on how much of the screen you want to see. The next thing is the viewport, is how big the playing window is. And if you make it too large in comparison to the camera, let's take a look at it. So right now it's full screen, but we're going pretty small, only showing this much. Let's see what it looks like and see the quality of the graphics and whether that is something we want to continue doing. The advantage to this is we hardly see any of that screen, but you see how pixelated everything is? It just depends. If you like that pixelated look, then go for it. It can be fun. My recommendation is you either make the viewport smaller. So let's try that. 800 by 600. We'll test that out. It'll be a slightly smaller screen. And we can play around with the screen until we got it roughly the size we want. You'll notice it's a little bit smaller, so it's not quite, the pixelation doesn't look quite so bad. Let's make it even smaller. Let's make it 640 by 480. Hopefully you'll be able to see that the screen is even smaller when we play it. And it really is going to be up to you how you want to size that up. I think it's still pixelated, but I think the image quality looks far superior. But that's really going to be up to you. There's one other thing we want to do, and that's how it relates to object following. Now let me just drag this up all the way up to the top so you can see the full settings here. When we follow the player, we have a horizontal border and a vertical border. And so I'd already switched these numbers earlier before recording this. But note how close you are to the screen. By default, it's like 32 by 32. So this would be like the default setting. Now watch how close we get to the side of the screen before it even starts to move. Now, do you see how close I am? I'm right here, and if I go left and I turn, so I turn here, I can get this close, nothing happens. I get that close, nothing happens. Not till I move again that it actually starts moving the screen. Well, I can hardly see anything in front of me. And I don't think that's necessarily good gameplay, but, you know, it's up to you. So I'm going to go back to what I had, about 150. And let's also climb up while we're at it so you can see how that behaves as we're going up. It's also a good idea not to be able to see everything above us. See that? So we kind of go up and down with the camera. There we go. Okay. I'd say that's pretty good, but again, it's going to be your decision. But just so you know, for sure, what you want to do is you want to expand viewports, cameras, enable the viewports. You want to make one or more, one of these visible. Check the box says visible. to adjust this, like how much of the screen, how much of the game room it captures. That's where you set the camera properties. And then how big of a window it displays when you play the game is up to the viewport properties. So adjust those as necessary. Choose what object you're following. And I recommend you expand the horizontal and the vertical border. Leave everything else the same. And I think at this point we're ready to let's make a dangerous object over here. Actually, before I do that, let's talk a little bit about hints and stuff. Let's say we have a platform. Let's say we're trying to get all the way up to the top, and at the very top is where we want to add our exit out of the room. The other thing you're going to want to think about while you're on, dealing with a restricted room is you're probably going to want to make sure that you set some tile hints. So it just depends on where you want to do it. We're going to go pick tile background. I'm going to open this up and go to room editor. And here we got danger, level, bonus, and we have these arrows. So what's cool about this is we can actually copy this and we can, for example, have this little thing here. In our first room, it's a good idea to put something like that. And then maybe we want to do an up arrow over here. And of course, my poor palm tree is we're having a hard time blocking this. So I'm going to go delete the palm tree. And I'm going to move the palm tree that I walked behind maybe over here a little more. Notice I'm using control to paint it in. So I move it over here a little bit more. Okay. So I got these arrows, and then of course you can paint these, click them over here if you're setting them that direction. I am kind of curious as to how we reverse that so it's facing the opposite way. I'm not even sure how I would do that. Well, I was going to try to see if I could find out. I'll let you try to discover that. Obviously, you could edit the sprite sheet and reverse it that way. There's got to be a way to do it. But honestly, I'm just going to go ahead and make it something like this, where we're going to use these hints. I'm not going to fill it out because I'm really more here about showing you what to do, not, in general, like how to do certain things. You see you got that arrow that sort of points you in the right direction. Here we know we got to go up. And then, all right, we're going to change this. So this time when we collide here, check this out. Here's what we're going to put. See these spikies here? Oh, yeah, that's right. We're going to paint those right there in the room. So now if we fall onto the spike, it's going to kill us. And I know that sounds pretty graphic and violent, but hey, we got to make it a more interesting, dangerous, perilous game, or it just gets kind of boring. So what we need is an object that when we land on, it's going to basically take a life away and then maybe restart the room or even send you all the way back to the beginning. To begin with, let's go ahead and just create an object. Now we already have the sprite for it. It's called sprite death. So we're going to go ahead and add an object and we'll call it object death, which the idea here is if we collide with it, and of course, we only need this. You notice it's the bottom here. The collision mask is going to be at the bottom of a tile. Anyway, so the idea here is that when we collide with that, then it's going to cause some kind of damage one way or the other. So I'm going to go back to the object player, and I'm going to set a collision. And it's going to be a collision with the object death here. So if I collide with it, if you're doing lives, this would be the time to take lives away. I'm not doing it that way. I might add scoring and all that later. But for now, I'm just going to focus on basically, let's jump back to the first room and restart the room. No, I'm sorry. We got to do object player die. Duh. So we're going to take the instance. We're going to change the instance, and we're going to change ourselves into object player die. And then on the object player die at the end, then we get to decide if we want to change that. Pretty straightforward. Let's just go ahead and run this so you can sort of see it. The difference is it doesn't just pop us back in the room. It actually, oh, it didn't do that. Okay, so I forgot if we're going to collide with that, we need to, when we change the instance, you want to make sure that that instance is set up right. Object, player, die. And it did set gravity force to 0. Did I do change instance? I might have. Collision object die. Yeah, change into object player die. I think part of the problem is I didn't make it solid, so let's test that out again. Let's see if making it a solid object improves the behavior. Huh, interesting. Guess what? I don't think I added the object death in the room. So honestly, whether it was solid or not probably didn't matter. Okay, silly me. It happens. We do this. Go to the room. Yeah, there's no object death there. So we go to instances. We click on resources, object death, drag it out, hold down Alt, and click here. Now we run it. Now it'll work just fine. Just because we paid it in the tile set doesn't mean it's actually going to work as that object. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. We didn't actually need to change anything other than changing it into object death. So we have dangerous objects, we have hints, and at this point we need to start thinking about how we're going to move from room to room. So a couple things. One of the things that I recommend you do, and there's a lot of other tutorials that talk about this, the first thing I recommend you do is making your object player persistent. The main benefit to persistent is that score, health, and lives can persist throughout the game. Now, we're going to assign those in the next tutorial, but I want to just show you how persistent works. And the way we're going to do this is by creating a second room. So I want to go to the room 1, and what we're going to do is we're going to open up a space here so that when we go outside of the room, it's going to take us to the next room if it exists. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to delete the tile set for the bottom 3 here. So I'm going to do that by just clicking off here. I think I have to just expand this out until I find a nice blank grid. There's a blank grid. I'm going to just bring this back. While it's blank, you just click, click, click. That gets rid of the tiles. We're going to go to the instance, and we're just going to delete each of those right here. Now what we want to do is we want to change it so when our player goes outside of the room, and at this point we can't really go outside up here or here, but you would want to shut off all those exits except for one. When we go outside of it, it's going to take us to the next room. I think eventually we'll put a door or a portal in there that we'll use, but for now we're just going to make it open. So we want to go to the object player, and we want to have outside room. So you see the outside room so this is what we're going to do. I must have already said it and forgot to mention that. So the first thing we want to do is find out if the room is the last. Okay, if it's not the last one, we're going to go to the next room. Okay, so if room is not last, go to the next room. So now we're going to have to create a room. Now, I'm going to let you create it. I began by duplicating the existing room, and then I re-edited it. And this is what it currently looks like. We have a snake on this layer, a snake up here. Notice what we don't have the player in that room. Let's see if we can get into this room and see if it still works. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and test it out. If it works, then we're good. So the main key is we don't want to die. That would be bad. Run over here, jump over the platform, go outside of here. Notice we've persisted. You like that? We just added that. Now, let me double check, make sure I've got everything on the object player that you need to see. Room start. You're going to need to add room start. And on room start, I jump to the point of x93, y of 600. Don't know if that's in a previous tutorial or not. You just go to add event. It's going to be under other, and it's room start. So every time you start the room, we jump to this point. In the future, we'll add sort of a spawn point. We're going to treat that a little different. Okay, but for now, I think this is good enough. and things are working. In my next tutorial, I'm going to talk about creating score, health, and lives, and creating a heads-up display. And so we're just going to keep going. As long as I keep having new ideas, we're just going to keep moving forward. So stay tuned for that video. Thank you so much for watching.